Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to kick us off and then turn it over to Andy. But I'm Ann Prayville. I'm the CEO of Art Bridges and joined by Andy Phillips. And I think actually the next slide introduces us, Andy, so we'll just go on to that. Yes, there we are with our much more pretty headshots. So a little bit about Art Bridges. It was founded in 2017 in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I'll give you a little bit more about the origin story as we go through the presentation, but it's part of Alice Walton's vision for making art truly accessible to everyone. So as I said, I am the CEO. I've been in the role for about 10 months, but actually have come back to Bentonville, Arkansas. Prior to my role, I was in small regional museums in the United States as a museum director, and then I was at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art for about 8 years. And Andy is our incredible director of collection loans and exhibitions. So as you learn a little bit more about Art Bridges, you'll understand what a heavy lift she has and what a talented team she has to fulfill our mission. So go to the next slide. So our mission is really straightforward. We deliver access to meaningful experiences with art for personal and community well-being. And that idea of well-being is really intentional. Alice Walton has a vision that the arts is just as important as access to really high quality healthcare, and that quality of life is essential for having a good well-being. So how we fulfill that is we partner with museums to provide strategic and financial support to get American art out of storage and into communities nationwide through our innovative and collaborative programs. And the change that we see in our vision is that we want to empower art museums to collaborate more effectively, dismantle silos, and develop flexible solutions to overcome barriers of access, ensuring that museums are inclusive for everyone. And this is where a lot of what Key Futures is working on really intersects with what we are trying to accomplish. So the next slide. So here you can see Alice Walton. She, again, believes that everybody deserves access to art, that this is a human right. And, you know, she frames it as the idea of art being hope, it's opportunity, it's education, it's all of the things that we want. So again, just as essential as having access to high quality healthcare, high quality education, access to art is a right for everybody. Next slide. And I'll give you a little bit of the origin story in case you're not familiar. Crystal Bridges was the vision of Alice Walton. Oh gosh, it opened in 2011, but I think the construction was underway for about a decade prior to that. And she, as a child, never had access to arts, but she had these distinct memories of, you know, going to a Five and Dime and getting a little postcard or painting with her mother when they were on camping trips. And she wanted to open a, you know, state-of-the-art museum in her hometown of Bentonville, Arkansas. And this was to much skepticism of East Coast and West Coast elites or people in major metros, because they thought this is, you know, flyover country, who's going to ever visit this place? And 13 years later, I believe Crystal Bridges has welcomed over 8 million visitors. So it's, you know, one of the few museums that actually serves more people than its population of 55,000 people. So it's an incredible institution, but she also was very strategic. And rather than build a large collection storage warehouse where we, you know, the institution would just amass and amass, she had seen these vast storage facilities at institutions that were, you know, centuries old and did not want to do that. She believed that, you know, arts cannot exist if they don't have an audience, really similar to the closing conversation that we just had. If we wanted to care for art forever, nobody would ever see it. She believes that people need to be able to see it for it to be fully realized. So small storage space, and this idea kind of planted the seed for what Art Bridges could do. Could Art Bridges as a foundation give capacity to institutions that had collections that were in storage to get them out and redistribute them to institutions across the country that perhaps didn't have acquisition funds? I was a museum director before at a small regional institution. I had under $100,000 a year to acquire new artwork, which just does not go a long way. But I think there's also an ethical question too, like how much is enough? Can we just actually work collaboratively with each other to share those resources and really treat art as a public good. So we'll go to the next slide. So we have currently partnered with 240 museums of all sizes, so you can see across the country. Where there's less density of museums, we have less partners, but we are working on that. And we are also in Puerto Rico. Next slide. And we have two program pillars. We have a program pillar, art sharing, and the program pillar of community engagement. And we believe the two of those things coming together really intersect to provide access for all. So we'll go to the next slide and I'll kind of explain a little bit more about what community engagement means. So in our art sharing, and you can go to our website to learn all about this, we have our own collection of art. So these are very, you know, what people would think of as high valued things that we share with institutions that otherwise could not acquire these things. We also provide capacity to institutions that are creating great traveling exhibitions, but don't have the bandwidth or the registration team to share those exhibitions with colleagues. We have what we call the Partner Loan Network, and this is where we are getting art out of storage and giving loans of at least 2 years to organizations, museums across the country. And then we have our cohort program, which I like to think of as little mini ecosystems of art sharing. So think of a larger institution like the Philadelphia Museum of Art sharing their resources, their collection with a regional cohort of art museums across the state or across the region. For every art sharing program that we have community engagement. So this would be funding to develop programs in collaboration with your community. It can be really experimental, innovative, things that maybe you've never been able to try before. We also have an evaluation program. We want to know, are we moving the needle? If we're doing this work, if we're getting more diverse stories and artwork out there and innovative programming, are we actually building new audiences to come to institutions? We all know we've seen a dip in visitation post-COVID, but the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts in the US, has been tracking this over the decades, and we're seeing a dip across the decades. So how can we make sure that museums are viable and relevant to everybody? So we measure that through a visitor intercept survey that looks at not just really rich demographic details, but motivations and reasons for coming. We also have an Access for All program, which is about reducing barriers through admission fees. So we rolled this out at the end of 2023, where $40 million went out to 64 institutions to either eliminate their admission fees, either on certain days, evenings, or through different programs. Or for institutions that were already free, it was a way for them to market to new audiences and program for new audiences. And then we also have our Fellows program, which places emerging professionals in institutions that we work with across the country. So again, you can learn much more nuanced detail about all of these just by visiting our website, artbridgesfoundation.org. Go to the next slide. But to get to why we're here today, so why did we join Key Futures? Well, we're finding that issues of access and sharing art and sustainability are inextricably tied. So one of our biggest barriers, we can say we've got the financial resources, we have the logistical capacity because Andy's got this incredibly talented team of registrars and project managers. But at the end of the day, sometimes the denial of loans still comes because facility standards that are impossible to achieve cannot be achieved. Even though we work with trying to, give, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, create microclimates, it's just an easy way to rubber stamp what is often an already overburdened registration team within a very, bureaucratic institution. These standards are also responsible for pushing HVAC systems that add to the carbon footprint. We have also found, and Andy will talk a little bit more about this, crating is super expensive, y'all. Like, we spend a lot of money on crates, and then at the end of the day, we have to spend even more money to sustainably recycle them if we don't want them to end up in the trash. And then we're also trying to get the field to change their 3-month exhibition cycle to at least have their traveling exhibition programs to be a 6-month minimum, if not longer, so that we can also, again, reduce that kind of hamster wheel effect of adding to carbon emissions through the shipping. So for us, the business that we're in, we don't want to add to the problem. We want to lower the problem, but that means that we need to work with folks like Key Futures to develop innovative solutions for our own practice, and then hopefully for what we hope to push out to all of our partners as well. So I will turn it over to Andy, who's going to talk a little bit about how we've adopted some of these things.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah. So as Anne stated, we are not, the traditional museum model. We don't have our own brick and mortar space. So a lot of the issues that our partners have with climate control and facilities, we don't have directly, but we do have them indirectly. So as we were seeing this, as our organization, continues to grow and our focus continues to be on expanding access and sharing art, we really felt a need to start addressing those barriers that limit the art sharing around the country and drive up those costs. So back in April, we had this great idea that we would hold a convening here in Bentonville. We decided to create a space to talk about, these problems and the sustainability issues that all of us are currently experiencing. So again, we brought 50 museum professionals here. We wanted to gather leaders in the field who were thinking deeply about the roles and responsibilities of museums and the responsibilities to the communities and the collections. Again, that whole collection philosophy, if more is more, is that really the way that we should be thinking? So with that, the Art Bridges team, really, really carefully curated the attendee list for this convening. We want it to be very inclusive, but also diverse, and bring a group of, curatorial collections, conservation and executive level leaders here to start having these conversations. It was really important for us, again, to create a space where there could be transparency, there could be, kind of everyone speaking on the same level, not the typical hierarchy that they might feel having these conversations internally. Again, our goal was to improve and have sessions that presented expertise from a cross-section of professionals in the museum field and express how museums could be more sustainable. We had some great, again, sessions. Our keynote was presented by Whitney McGuire. She was the Associate Director of Sustainability from the Guggenheim Museum. She talked about exploring equity, involving community and sustainability, not within the museum, but also within the community around the museum. She really stressed the importance of involving staff at all levels in these conversations. Again, that's something that we have already heard from many of the presenters today about making sure that you have buy-in from all staff and you're not being exclusive. And framing accountability as part of the process rather than something that you're going to measure. Another session focused, getting ahead of myself here. Another session focused on exhibition design and building management. We had two presenters, one from MoMA and the other from the Glenstone Museum, and they kind of highlighted sustainability efforts that they were doing at their institutions. The, again, importance of having internal task forces, focusing not only on the inside of their institutions, but taking that to the outside as well. Both of these institutions were champions of how to reuse materials, sharing materials that you might otherwise throw out with other institutions that can reuse them to reduce waste. It was really, really eye-opening and inspiring. We even learned on Glenstone how they're, planting native plants to reduce their water consumption, and that their entire facility operates off of wind power. So again, really, really innovative and new ways that we can explore how to be more sustainable within our institutions. We also made sure to involve our for-profit friends. So we had several attendees from, the shipping industry. We had Stephen Riley, who is in charge of the Remuseum, who is leading the charge on challenging museum legacy systems and exploring how art can operate as new business models. We focused on, reusable crating options that were presented by Atelier 4 and Masterpiece, They touched on using turtle crates, using the loop system with Rockbox. Our friends at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum are actually working on a new vibration reducing reusable crating system. So Dale, the head conservator over there, presented on that. And then there was also, much collaboration about how the use of carbon calculator was being used. Again, to create more transparency with clients to show what their actual carbon footprints are, as they're transporting art, and hopefully, again, getting them to think about what ways can they improve on that. Can they do more shuttle transits rather than exclusives? Can they hold off on shipping things and, kind of plan ahead a little bit more, again, to utilize more of a shuttle service? So again, very, very thoughtful conversations. So after the convening, we conducted a survey of attendees to kind of inform how successful and useful our gathering was. We wanted to make sure that we were kind of accomplishing some of our initial goals, which were encouraging the adoption and understanding and possibly updating new standards regarding BEZO and greener museum practices. We also were hoping that we could identify and explore new opportunities for innovation in the existing barriers that most of these museums and that ourselves were facing in the collection sharing process. And then also we were trying to better figure out how us as a foundation could leverage our funder status to drive the development and help our partners adapt these new standards industry-wide and really encourage collaboration above them, and to not be scared, to take on new experiences and to, push these old standards. So overall, we really had a successful response. 72% of our attendees strongly agreed that the convening increased their interest in environmentally conscious art management approaches. So, we will definitely take that as a win. Some of the post-convening outcomes and feedback that we got, we had several attendees saying that they were going to go back and rethink how they would use and how they currently fabricated their crates, and different materials that they could utilize for packing, again, to reduce their own individual carbon footprints. We had attendees say that they were going to immediately go back and start initiating in-house conversations about legacy systems and how they can be updated, and then also bring some of these topics that we talked about to board members, so they can kind of start the conversation at that higher level and start discussing steps needed to start implementation of greener policies. The positive responses and actionable feedback from the convening not only highlighted our collective readiness for change, but it also underscored the importance of leveraging this momentum to foster increased art sharing and accessibility. So, art sharing and accessibility. So, Art Bridges, building on this momentum, our collection team plays a pivotal role in driving the Art Bridges mission forward. We implement innovative strategies and foster collaboration, and our team works to eliminate the barriers that we have kind of already touched on with our partners. And my team does this through, as Anne mentioned, borrowing works from institutions of all sizes to share with others. Sharing our own collection of artworks to fill in gaps that other institutional collections might have because they don't have large acquisition policies, and they continuously, want to try to refresh what they have and bring new audiences into the museum. So we highlight our collection, hoping them to uplift what they have in theirs and to create those new dialogues. We focus on traveling exhibitions from organizers who develop deep, impactful exhibitions, but they can't travel them on their own. So they might not have their own traveling exhibitions team. They might not have the staff capacity to do it. They might not have the funding to do it. So that's when our team kind of steps in to help facilitate those great exhibitions that otherwise wouldn't be seen by other institutions across the US. We approach all of our loans with a yes first policy that really applies for our collection, but that also applies for our partner loan network loans and also our traveling exhibitions. Obviously, because those are loans from other institutions, we are a little bit more restricted on what we can and can't do with those loans. But my team definitely tries to have a conversation and to make sure that there might be a yes in there. What does it take to get to that yes? So again, removing those barriers to sharing art, such as cost, staff capacity, and facility issues. So just to give you a little idea of the volume that ArtBridges does. So in our fiscal year 2024, I know we're not through 2024 yet, but we run on a little bit different fiscal year here at ArtBridges. In FY24, we lent over 700 artworks, and those artworks were transported over 138,000 miles. We've spent over $175,000 on shipping, and we've spent over $321,000 on crating. So again, great for our, for our art sharing. But as you can imagine, that's a huge carbon footprint. And if we're going to be an example and a leader in our industry and really be a champion of thinking about greener ways to do this, we really need to self-examine. We need to take a look at ourselves. And again, going back to, since we're not a traditional art museum, we don't have a brick and mortar space, trying to focus on and zero in on what are our biggest costs and creating the large amounts of waste and leaving the largest carbon footprints. So as you just saw, we move a lot of art. As a result, that's a lot of transit. That's a lot of crates, equaling, again, large carbon footprint. Currently, again, we had facility requirements that were set by many of our lenders. So it posed a barrier and can be restrictive in lending. ArtBridges temperature and humidity requirements are more flexible for our collection objects, but again, we still had a preset range in there. Our couriers, we definitely have analyzed how and why we're using couriers. In the past, we utilized a significant amount of on-site couriers, and even with our loans through our lending institutions, many of them were requiring lenders to be present during exhibition turnovers, and even for some specific installation of objects. And then our loan agreements and our contracts, looking at what we were issuing, many of our contracts were adapted from other institutions, meaning we were using their documents as templates when ArtBridges first started as a foundation. So they included the prescriptive numbers for facility requirements, and there had been little updating since then. So our next steps, as again, we've moved through this process, we have been starting to implement the following changes. Changes specifically to some of our programs. Our traveling exhibition requirements have shifted. We are now requiring 6-month placements for our exhibitions at each venue. So we typically place them for, we lend them, it's a two-year tour and 6 months for each. So they typically travel to 4 venues. In doing that, we have seen a reduction in, again, the transit. Because they're spending more time at those, there is less waste at those venues because there is a reduced turnover. We've also extended the loan period for our partner loan network loans to 2 years. So again, kind of extending that placement duration. We're trying to reduce our carbon footprint impact. Our loan agreements and contracts, we are updating them to be with more flexible language. We are, implementing BISO guidelines, including sustainability language, and the objects that do include specific requirements, they're definitely more bespoke to those actual objects rather than, the traditional, it needs to be in this range and it doesn't matter what the object is. So again, we are, we're taking that approach, and we're trying to enlist preventative conservation to help also determine the needs of objects and anticipated ranges for those objects. Our transit, we are using shuttles more frequently. We are, again, trying only to use exclusives when we have to. Right now, that is typically when we're shipping an exhibition, just because of the amount of objects that are in those exhibitions. But for our partner loan network loan groupings, which typically be 3 to 5 objects, and our own collection works, we're definitely shuttling those works to reduce carbon footprint and emissions. We are investing in some reusable crates to cut down on our crating cost. We are purchasing a small number of our own stock to test it out, but we're also planning on incorporating rental reusable crates for other loans when possible, for, again, our partner loan network groupings, because they do have such long-term placements of 2 years. The reusable crating system really lends itself to that, where we can pack those works, ship them to a lender, and then ship those crates out to get repacked with another loan, rather than having them sit at that institution and oftentimes having to pay storage fees for those crates. We are also looking into retrofitting our current exhibition crates when they come off tour, and figuring out how we can reutilize those rather than paying to have them destroyed. On the courier side, we are moving to absolutely no truck couriers whatsoever. We haven't used truck couriers for a long period of time, but we are definitely, not using them. They're really not needed. I mean, for those of us who have rode on a truck before, if something happens, you're sitting in the front, you're not going to stop that crash. You're not going to stop that occurrence. If the truck is on fire, you're getting as far away from the truck as possible. You're not going to be the one trying to get the stuff out of the back of the truck. So we are defaulting to virtual couriers over in-person couriers whenever possible. We are also looking more at utilizing local contract registrars when we have lenders that do require registrars or a courier to be on site during installation of their loans. Again, trying to reduce, airfare, ground transportation, all of those things that cost carbon emissions. And then, if we do have to send somebody, really thinking about what's the best economical and smallest footprint that we can do to send somebody there to have them in person. So with those implementations, again, some of them we haven't done for too long, but we are already seeing some successes. We have seen just an overwhelming enthusiasm among our staff here. Everyone is super excited and on board with doing this. I've had individuals from other departments come to me with ideas. So that's been fabulous. We've had people even checking in on progress and success stories that they could share out with other partners as they're having their conversations with them. Our traveling exhibition contracts, we've updated those. Most recently, we had an institution reach back out to us prior to signing it because their registration office questioned our wider facility range that we had in there and our BESO requirements. And, again, it was more of a conversation. I just went back to them and explained, what our sustainability initiative was and what we were hoping to do. And they were completely on board. They were ecstatic. Actually, they're like, oh yeah, we know about BESO. We haven't really done much research yet, but we really, really want to get into it. So again, trying to have more of a conversation with our partners about ways that they can make improvements, save themselves money, and also be more green. We've had a positive response to our longer loan placements, which has been great. At first, we weren't quite sure because, again, a lot of our partners have very strict exhibition schedules, and we weren't quite sure if they could accommodate the 6-month switch. So far, so good. We've had really positive feedback, and also feedback from them saying that it really allows them to develop more robustful learning and engagement programming along with those exhibitions with that extended time period. We have had more flexibility with facilities. A couple of our institutions that were initially denied due to facility requirements, we provided different loan options to them from different partners that had a different range of facility requirements or that were a little bit more flexible. So again, just having those conversations that the no isn't a no from our point. If it's a no, well, how can we turn that no into a yes? We've been actively working with, again, more problem solving and collaboration with our partners. And then also, again, the big one, being an example, as we are in the place that we are in the industry and we're able to fund a lot of these organizations, being able to do that and being able to advise them and direct them in areas that they might not have a lot of expertise in. It has been really great connecting with Key Cultures and Key Futures and to have them as a resource. So when we do have those questions that come up, we have that ability to kind of direct them towards Caitlin and her wonderful team to get answers.